I was wondering then, Milan, I've called COVID the Great Equalizer, right? Where I feel as though we've all kind of, on a basic level, needed to find a new way of doing things. No matter what business you're in, no matter how how you worked before, now you kind of have to find a different way of doing that. Are you finding that even when you're engaging with developers, with those that are looking for developers, that you've had to change how they interact and the way that they need to set their businesses forward?
Definitely, is I guess the short answer.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing is that the world looks very different now than it did before COVID, but there's been no new technology breakthrough that drove it. Even the COVID vaccines came from before, if that makes sense, the core mRNA technology.
And I mean, all the other apps we use, Zoom,
100%,
Microsoft Teams,
they're all
of those
there,
things
right?
actually existed, right?
So the thing that has to change is how we think about the world and how we engage.
Sure.
And I find that quite fascinating to think about. We could have done all of this before, but it's like either we, as a group, we sort of lack the ideas or the creativity, or I think the big thing that we've experienced is so offers then as a team we had remote days. And they worked well for us as a team. So everyone was fully remote. And
this was before COVID?
Before COVID, yeah.
Okay.
So that was a big thing, but we weren't fully remote. And the reason for that was because not everyone else was fully remote, if that makes sense. So that makes it very hard, the expectations. And I think what COVID has enabled, it sort of reset that human level expectation. And I guess what I'm hoping is that sticks to some degree, to go, hey, we can be better. We don't have to spend all of this time in traffic, let's say, every morning on a commuter, whatever it is. And I think the other nice thing is that at the start of COVID, there weren't any technology breakthroughs, but the amount of investment and innovation now is absurd. So we could see it on offers and on our platform, just how quickly companies, let's say in South Africa, adapted. We saw the very large companies form partnerships with smaller, nimble companies to create new products. Let's say the large retailers working on home delivery and things, and sort of in every pocket, whether it's better communication tools or whatever. And I think those advancements will stick.
Sure.
Let's say grocery delivery is like a cool service. Like a lot of people use it.
That's huge for me right now.
Like even if you can go to a shop now, it's changed the game.
Yeah.
So I think it's sort of, what I'm hoping is it kind of like reached a sort of an inflection point where now it'll build its own momentum. I don't know if you guys think so, but it feels like that.
Sure. I think that's absolutely fascinating, Davini. I mean, you have to play in a space that's entirely different, even though it was exactly the same before, right? Because all of that you mentioned was there. I look back at perhaps some of the events we used to host or things you used to go to, and you'd have sort of an MC standing up there and speaking to a large crowd. It still happens. You just do it virtually, right? So nothing has really changed in that sense.
Well, the one big change is they're wearing their sweatpants. You don't see that.
Look, we're looking great right now, right?
Yeah.
This is the most we've had to dress up for most of the time right now. For some even 2 years. If we were to, from here, you kind of ask yourself, where to? We've done a lot. Right? Or we've accepted and taken in much of this change right now. And you kind of have to realize that, as I said earlier, it's a consistency of that change, because you're going to have to keep morphing now. Because of the instantaneous advancements we've made, it means that you have to realize that I'm going to change today, but tomorrow the needs are going to change too, and I'm going to have to change then also. How do we stay adaptive as businesses? If I start maybe with you, Evelyn.
Yeah, sure. Although we were talking about it earlier, and you had a great conversation about it. It's there's the part with need to change, and we need to understand that. But the real key thing is like, how do you activate that, and how do you get into a cadence and a rhythm? We were talking about this earlier, that one of the things that I've learned over the past 2.5 years, I started with like, you just got to understand the customer, like let's just talk to them, let's connect, and then at some point I was like, but it's not going into how we're actually making decisions and how we're actually designing things. And designing obviously is also decision making, right? It's like, do we do it this way or that way? And so originally first we were like, okay, so we need to build more empathy. Okay, cool. But still then there's a certain cadence of like trying and failing, and you had a really good point about this, like that needs to be established and that needs to start being the DNA of a company to be able to constantly respond. I think also one of the things that, if you look at companies 30, 40 years ago, changes didn't happen so fast. And it's just going faster and faster and faster and faster. So I'm not even sure if the speed that we are thinking of now is going to be enough. But so we at some point we have to rethink that idea again. But maybe you want to add something to the
As Andy Grove says, only the paranoid survive. I'm a firm believer of that.
Yeah.
You have to be paranoid, not too paranoid, but enough to want to change things all the time, right? I mean, I don't know, the point that she's making there, you agree?
Definitely. I was, while you guys were talking about it now, I was trying to think like what has changed, and if I had to take a guess, when you're building things like physical things with atoms and stuff, then building stuff is hard. Okay, and humanity overall has like ingrained this in us. Like the risk is, can it be built? So like I'm an engineer by training, so we totally trained. Like, can it be built? How would you build it?
Yeah.
But software is kind of weird. Like it's pretty much magic in my mind. Like if you take Harry Potter spells, I think a smartphone would be like an elite level spell, right?
Okay,
like it can do it can do like 5 Harry Potter spells, whether it's moving photos or talk to people remotely. If you think about it, right?
If you
don't know how it works, you'd be like, that's definitely magic. And I think the thing with software and it being pretty much close to magic is you can almost build anything. So we have to change our mindset, not and go, can it be built, but like, should it be built? If that makes sense, is it useful to someone?
Yeah.
So that ties back to your, like you asked earlier, like how much of I can't remember the exact word used, but sort of a burden this like customer feedback loop is. But I actually think that is becoming more and more of the thing. Because if you can build anything, the question is what should be built?
Yes.
And often the answers are weird. Like Airbnb is like a great example for me. It makes no sense until you see it. And all of the original investors in Airbnb said they did not think it makes sense at all. They just thought these guys building it were amazing. They all said they thought it was the worst idea ever. And that's
now
like,
look.
But the thing is, it was so easy to prototype and build that you didn't have to worry too much about whether it made sense, as long as a small group of people thought there's something there because they'd experienced the need personally. And I think that's the trick is knowing what to build, what is useful for your customers, I like the idea of that context, like what is their context, and very quickly trying something like, hey, is this useful? Like if every week you can ship a thing and go, hey, does this actually help? Is that slightly better or not? And then take that learning and be okay if it's not better, because next week you've got another shot at it.
What I'm hearing is data. Data is just ultimately a big key element to this, because that drives whether it should be built or not, why it should be built as well, right?
I think totally. I think data enables it. I sort of like that idea of like data, you have to think and then it becomes information, and then it becomes insights. And I think what you're adding is actually it's only really useful when it's action. Like information or insights, it only matters when you make a decision based on it.
Yeah. Sure, it kind of just sits as data and information, right?
Yeah.
But once you then action it, now it actually looks like something. It now feels like.
And back to the COVID problem, I think that's a culture problem to solve. Like culturally, even if all the data and the insights are there, you have to have the kind of organizational culture that can and wants to act on it.
Yeah, and you felt like you've had the organizational culture. I mean, you've had to, whether you liked it or not, in some instances, right, had to change.
Yeah, I think, when we're talking a lot about business here, but I think one of the key things, and we've been through a lot in the last 2 years, if you think about it, as individuals, as institutions, companies, whatever it is. And I think, we often talk about this at Investec, is that I'm not sure you can put your arm's length out and reach for somebody who hasn't been affected by COVID or lost somebody by COVID. So I think the heightened level of humanity and trying to do good and be better is top of mind for everybody. And I think, when you talk about data becoming information, becoming insights, and becoming action, I think there's a responsibility on a lot of companies, in fact all companies, around saying, how do we make the country better? How do we make the world better by what we're doing? And because we can talk business all the time, and
easily, I suppose.
but I don't wake up every day to say I want to make a business richer, personally. So for me, it's about saying, how do I wake up to know that, like, in 10 years' time, when I look back, the place is better, or the company is better, or not financially, but just a better place. And I think data, insights, and action speaks to that in different ways. But I think we need to. There's a consciousness that's evolved over the last 2 years that speaks around how do you actually look at businesses and look at it driving the South African economy, for instance. So I'm very passionate about that as a proudly South African company, as Investec. We are very passionate about the country. And I think when we talk about, like, how do you make things better, looking at skills like software developers, who are actually going to be at the forefront of driving innovation, moving businesses forward. How do we invest in those type of skill sets? How do we grow kind of those sorts of segments of the country that will actually just supercharge the growth of South Africa and what we're doing? So, like, I don't think I'm going to be inspiring my team at Investec by saying, let's wake up every day and make businesses richer. Like, you wanna come to work and do something meaningful. And I think the more we start realizing that, yes, data and insights and information makes good business sense, but the way you action it and the impact that has on the country and the world means something. And I think that is super important, and it should be. Our CEO often says, and we have it on all our desktops, we don't live off society, we live in society. And I think that has to be at the forefront of every business strategy going forward.
Sure. You don't live off society, you live in society. So ultimately making that change means that you create a better society.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. And it's all changeable because circumstances change.
But tech makes it more accessible. Like, if you look at what Yoko has done, it's enabled people in every part of the country to be able to access technology or a banking hard asset that was traditionally not accessible. What Milan and the guys are doing at OfferZen is, and we often talk about developing out the software developer skill set, is you don't need a degree to be an excellent software developer. Sure. That's what I love about it, is that, like, when I talk to my girls now, I'm not saying, and Investec is a traditional bank that banks doctors, lawyers, engineers. It's what we've often, like, as my mom told me to be that when I was growing up. But I'm not
that's
saying
why
to
I'm a failed accountant. But yes.
I'm also a failed accountant that works at a bank. But I think what's interesting is that that's not the professions we're telling our children to do now. And I think the reality is that technology helps make a real equalizer in the world. So you could be a little boy growing up with no access to the Ivy League schools that many of the rich people have in the world, or private schools and that sort of stuff. Some of our best developers at Investec don't have degrees.
Sure.
And that for me is super powerful, because they are going to be changing the world. Milan gave me a book a while back, and it was called Ask Your Developer. And
all the answers, eh?
All the answers.
It's really good.
It's Ask Your Developer, and I put it on everybody's desks, including all our execs' desks.
Oh wow, okay.
Because I think what's going to be defining strategy, business, the world, is about taking everybody's view and insights and creativity into consideration. So the people who are going to be making the real difference and defining the future of businesses going forward is not necessarily only the guy in the suit.
I feel bad now. I'm the guy in the suit. You agree?
I don't think anyone in our company wears a suit. It's, at the moment, it's mostly sweatpants. And,
it's a bit taboo now. It's getting taboo eventually anyway, right?
It's like, you're wearing pants? What's happening here? No, I definitely agree. And I think, look, Yoko is about helping people thrive. That's both the people internally in our company, That's our merchants, and a lot of it for us is about storytelling. So yes, we use the data, we use the research, but we're trying to bring the story into Yoco, and that's also where insights and knowledge actually becomes empathy, right? Like actually seeing. So one of the things, for example, that we do is every Thursday we come together in a gathering. Nowadays it's on Zoom, so you see all these little faces and you have to click through a few times to see all of them. But we have one of our merchants there, and they join us, or we have one of the partners that we work with, and it's just this connecting and reiterating that why are we doing this thing? Like, why are we all here? And of course we all need to pay our rent, but that's not the thing that gives us energy. That's not the thing that makes me feel happy to open my laptop in the morning, right? And it's amazing to see the kind of impact that you can have.